Ladies and gentlemen, the Central Collegiate Building.
Bless this house, O Lord, we pray. Make it safe by night and day. Let these walls...
The theatre opened this term for one of those famously obscure productions of the Music Society.
But you can see what it's going to look like here in the foyer. It's unfortunate they haven't got the ceiling in at the moment, but still. Are they running late with the construction?
I think the ceiling is going to stay like that.
You expect it to be covered with something.
I think it's extremely attractive, and I'm looking forward to its being used. I hope for the Camden Festival, or for other things of the same kind. It looks a little unfinished, but it's got...
All the usual people were there.
This is the new bar in the Central Collegiate Building. Unfortunately, we can't serve with any beer because we haven't got a license.
We interviewed the architect of the CCB, Mr. Fellow Atkinson.
What are the particular problems you've come across in designing this building?
Well, I think the main problem is the fact that it's in 3 stages, and only stage 1 is built now, and it really won't make complete sense until the other 2 stages are built. Furthermore, stage 1 had to be in this particular position, and it had to contain the theatre. And the theatre had to be this way round, that is, with the stage end towards the street, towards Gordon Street, in order to allow for the expansion of the factory beneath the seating. And these were the main problems, I think.
What particular difficulties you've had in fitting in all the student requirements in this building?
We've had quite a lot of difficulty. One of the problems involved in fitting them in is that the brief, of course, was made probably nearly 10 years ago. And when we first started to develop the building round the brief, which was 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, it's a very exact brief, it's very detailed, and it's very good. But since then, of course, there have been 3 generations at least of students, of presidents, of union presidents, a new provost, and a new secretary. And the brief is very complicated, and of course a lot of people may think that it needs changing or modifying during the development of the building.
But what about fitting in all the different shapes of rooms?
Well, this is always a big problem, because of course, in a way, it's a bit of a fruit salad. There are so many different sizes which have to be fitted in, from as small as the humour room to as big as the theatre, and then you've got the rowing tank and so on and so forth. This takes more time than perhaps anything else, fitting in so many varied shapes and sizes. There are problems of soundproofing, there are structural problems, and problems of association, and linking up with one another. And of course, to do this, we had to plan the building as a whole, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And in a sense, phase 1 is so dominated by the theatre that the rest of it, in a sense, are just links joining the 2 other phases, and therefore don't make a great deal of real use until the 2 other phases are actually built, at least until phase 2 is.
Tower Hill is a traditional attraction for visitors to London. Unknown to thousands of tourists and Essex commuters, Tower Hill is also the home of what must surely be Oulu's strangest society.
To be a Berringer. You've got all this peculiar jargon and these little diagrams you study, and then you go off to these remote places and ring. Well, I suppose most Berringers are Christians, but a lot of Berringers, especially in this society, are not Christians. In fact, they're quite militant atheists. They may be a bit mad, but they're perfectly social. In fact, I'd say they were very sociable, and they're very fond of drinking beer too. This is a normal starting position, actually. Most people think that bells are hung mouth downwards when they start, but when you ring a bell, it starts mouth upwards and then it completes a full circle. The momentum does most of the work, actually. What you have to do is just to put in enough effort to overcome the friction. In fact, ringing a bell is a bit like a yo-yo. The yo-yo part there remains static and the rope moves up and down. You ring them in descending order of pitch, each bell striking individually in the octave, and this we call rounds. It does get rather boring ringing just rounds after a while, and this is what people found about 400 years ago when they invented something called change ringing. In change ringing, the bells strike in different sequences, starting from rounds. Because it's physically impossible to make the second change very different from the first, the bells change over in pairs. Now, a repetition of this procedure would obviously give rounds again, so the third row is generated by changing the middle two bells. If we continue changing 2 and 3 pairs of bells alternately, as we have been doing, then we eventually come back to rounds, having produced 12 different sequences or rows. The ringer doesn't actually have to remember all the rows. Instead, he just learns the path of his bell through the column of figures. And this he calls his blue line. And this blue line can become quite complicated when you get more bells and more changes. One gets the bug for bell ringing. I'm not quite sure what this bug is, but one gets a bug, and once it's bitten, you tend to go off and spend hours and hours bell ringing and go all over the country. And wherever you go in England, if you walk into a strange tower, you can rest assured that you'll meet someone there who will greet you friendlily. Scientifically speaking, a peal is when you've rung 5,000 different rows or changes. This lasts about 3 hours, and all 5,000 rows must be without repetition. This is a sort of basic standard of assessing one's capability as a ringer. Most towers in London, in fact, won't allow peals to be rung because of the noise. You can block up the belfry windows, the louvers. This is rather expensive, but I think this is a thing more and more churches, especially in big cities, are going to have to think about doing. For a lot of people, bells have very emotional appeal. And I think in the countryside, where there's very little noise, most people enjoy hearing the sound of bells as they come over the air on a quiet summer's evening.
With increasing concern over the proposed changes in college and student grants, we interviewed the college secretary and Ian Wintersgill of the NUS for their reactions to the situation.
What NUS wants is a grant for a university of $450 a year, which is bringing back to a comparative standard of living to that of 1962. Professor Brown's committee was originally told to bring the standard of living up to that level of 1965, but since then the Treasury said it will cut this by 50%. 50% is the amount they've given us, which Gordon Walker said in the Commons the other week, so we hope it will be that. This college is fairly fortunate compared to most in London, but the things which will be affected by most are hall fees. Intercollegiate hall fees are scheduled to go up by £40 per annum. Books, the price of books has already gone up by 24% this past year. Some American textbooks for scientists by up to 100%. Local education authorities, of which there are over 160 in the country, are very lax in giving their awards. Some will give you awards for some things, some will not, particularly if you have to take a year's study again. And we want to get this sorted out. There's also the means test level. At the moment it starts at £700. We want it taken up to £1,100 to give working class parents a better chance and their children a better chance of study. I think those are the main points which concern us here.
How effective has the union been in supporting the NUS campaign?
I think a lot of people have certainly pulled their fingers out, and a lot could get done if the students take part in, for instance, writing to their MPs, taking part in the national demonstration and in the lobby that we've planned. I think we might then get some results.
Mr. Tatzel, can you tell us how big the cut in college grant is going to be?
Well, it's not so much a cut in grant as the absence of an adequate increase in grant. Our budget at the moment is round about £5 million a year, of which getting on for £1 million comes in outside grants from research councils and similar bodies, and the money from fees is about 7% of our income, as with other universities. A very small amount comes from endowments, and the rest comes directly to us from the UGC. So something under 4 million, you could say, is what we need from the UGC every year. They have complicated the situation this year by dealing with equipment for new buildings on a totally new basis, and this is now taken out of the block grant, which we get from the university, or via the university from the UGC, and we are being given what we think is an inadequate amount in compensation for this from the new system. Putting it briefly, I think the position is that the college really needs about £80,000 a year extra every year in order to pay for the normal contractual increments that we have to pay to members of staff and to allow a reasonable margin for promotions. And what we're getting in the way of an increment every year is between £50,000 and £60,000. To add to this, there's no discernible money in the grant for the developments which the UGC seems to think that we ought to undertake. In this college, for instance, we've been advised by them that we ought to develop physics, biological sciences, engineering, architecture, town planning, and do a bit for general administration. But where we're going to pay, how we're going to pay for all this and meet our normal contractual obligation to pay increments, we don't see at the moment.
Is University College in the same position as other universities?
Well, the situation varies among different groups of universities. For obvious reasons, the new universities who are embarking on a program of expansion now, which has to be supported, or that it would make nonsense of their foundation, appear to have come off a bit better than the rest of us. The smaller red brick universities, maybe because they have a greater possibility of expansion than some of the older ones, also appear on the whole to have done a little bit better. The main body of red brick, together with Oxford, Cambridge and London, on the whole have done about the same.
What do you think the UGC are trying to achieve by all this?
Well, I think they're trying to achieve three things, all of which they conceive to be in the national interest in a short-term sort of way. The first thing is they're trying to drive graduates out of universities into other forms of activity. They are encouraging us to increase our undergraduate numbers in arts in order to meet a situation which is arising in the schools where more people are doing arts A-levels and science A-levels. And thirdly, they're trying to depress the staff-student ratio, thinking that our universities are a bit expensively staffed and run. They should here remember, of course, that we achieve higher standards in this country in a shorter time than almost anybody else with a lower dropout rate. And this is probably the result of our generous staff-student ratio, because individual students get more teaching here than they do anywhere else.
Free entertainment in London abounds if you know where to look for it. Admission to galleries such as this one is free, while those with more plebeian tastes can gaze gratis at the works of London's pavement Picassos. Legal eagles can all go down the Strand and while away many a happy hour lapping up some divorce cases, or else plunge into the Old Bailey, where criminals are presented with invitations to Wormwood Scrubs and Dartmoor. Even holes in the ground, like this one in Carey Street, are excellent entertainment, for as you can see, they are always hives of activity. St. Paul's, not 10 minutes' walk from Carey Street, is well worth a visit, and though it will cost you 4 bob to get to the top, you are amply rewarded by the view. On Sunday, why not join the throng at Speaker's Corner and indulge in a little repartee with the orators?
When I come to court, I lie and lie, and when I come in, the woman gets the same thing as a man gets the same thing as a woman. If you know what that is. Any questions? Now, what am I talking about?
Finest of all is a walk down Petticoat Lane. Here, if you should have some spare cash, you can buy anything from a teacup to a turnip and be amused at the same time.
A pound! Pound, who wants it? A pound! Yeah, 5 bob.
Can I interest you, sir? Can I try and move the spirit?
see, we are licensed by the RSPCA to sell worms and snakes and throughout the country. You don't have to buy them.
The shilling only. I serve the Queen. Think the shilling only, think the bub.
This year's carnival opened with a resounding failure in Hyde Park. Eddie Reed's early morning attempt to proclaim a republic on the island in the Serpentine was foiled through the vigilance of the Metropolitan Constabulary, and the sun rose over the same peaceful scenes as usual. After an alternative attempt to seize a traffic island in Oxford Street was completely ignored, the expedition turned into a traditional march back to college.
Goodbye, blues. Lost to loving arms I used to use. Lonesome night, low down news. Now she might be, I don't know. I've got those old goodbye blues.
Meanwhile, in the midst of Saturday afternoon shopping in Chelsea, things were afoot. With UC ragmag sellers and 3 ITV camera crews trying to look inconspicuous, Sarah Ward, star of stage and screen, began to interview young passers-by. Suddenly, the peace was shattered by the arrival of a certain familiar blue van. Back at college, Miss Ward suffered the same unceremonious treatment. But the victim of the kidnap didn't seem too disturbed, and at times it was difficult to tell whose side in fact she was on. Sunday, and after a quick recovery from the night before, Ross McGregor was at Speaker's Corner to stir up the rag collection.
You gentlemen, surely you have something about which you would like me to speak. Sir, I have somebody here who has got his priorities right but right. What are you doing about sex? You ask my landlady. Student grants. That is agreed. I went up to a conference at Birmingham a couple of weeks ago to talk about grants. And one of the things that people don't realise in this country, that is most of the people don't realise in this country, is the way, in fact, that most students have to work for their living as hard as any of you do. I have worked at many things. I am famous in Sheffield because in World Cup fortnight, I was working as a lorry driver's mate for a factory that manufactured Guinness clocks, which is one of those filthy great big things that plays tunes. And we took this thing up to Sheffield for the World Cup and put it on Fitzallen Square. Unfortunately, nobody told us about the public lavatory underneath. And 20 tons of it went straight into the gym.
A good time was had by all, and after a time, the more enthusiastic even got round to collecting some money. Climax of the week was the race up the post office tower, when 15 UC students competed for the prize of a meal for two in the Tower restaurant. Also taking part was Cliff Morgan, and ITV cameras were once again on the scene to record the event. 33 floors and 798 steps later, the first contestants soon began to arrive, with Cliff Morgan considerably the worse for wear. All the competitors, in fact, made it to the top, and the previous record was beaten by more than 5 minutes. We leave you with a note from our scientific correspondent.
The post office tower is 620 feet high, while the average male UC student weighs 11 stone 2 pounds. Thus the work done in running up the tower is 96,720 foot-pounds. In simple terms, this is approximately the effort required to push the front lodge 4 feet 4 inches closer to the biological sciences block.
Malcolm Muggeridge's sensational comments on student immorality received much publicity recently, so we investigated the situation at University College. Statistics show that the average UC student spends 0.629 hours a week on sex, 10 seconds a week on drugs, and 208.75 hours a week on academic study.
All you need is love, love. Love is all you need. Nothing you can notice, no. Nothing you can see that isn't shown. No way you can be the way you're meant to be. It's easy. All you need is love.
We asked several students for their opinions.
Students at University College are immoral?
Well, that depends on what you define immorality as. I mean, if you say that 60% of the British students living together is immoral, well, I guess they are more immoral than other students in the States, for instance.
Well, what do you think is immoral?
Well, I think man's sort of indecency to other men is immoral. Things like using napalm in Vietnam, or just fighting in Vietnam at all. I think human disrespect for other human beings is about the worst sin possible.
As an engineer, would you say that engineers are more interested in alcohol than in sex?
Well, I think really with most engineers it's more a case of one thing leads to another.
Do you find that your sex life interferes with your academic studies?
No, I would say that the absence of it would hinder it and the presence promote it.
Do you think that students in England are more immoral than students in China?
Yes, definitely.
I don't think you can separate academic work from sex life. These are two very important aspects of a student's life. Obviously, sex is an important aspect of any person's life, and work is an important aspect of the student's life in particular. If you have a happy sex relationship with someone, your work is obviously going to benefit from this. Conversely, if you have a bad sex relationship, it's going to suffer. I think this is the link between the two.
Well, I don't think it's the sex that causes the difference in study, you know. There's no problem where that's concerned. It's just the emotional entanglements that sort of come in with it. It's when you've got these that you get all frustrated and you can't do your work and things start to go wrong. Sex itself, I don't think makes any difference to study if you've got it or if you haven't.
Well, if you ask me what students' morals are like, I really don't know, but if you ask me what they should be, I'd say it's up to them, and it's not for me or anybody else, or Malcolm Muggeridge even, to say what students' morals should be.
We then interviewed Dr. Mellison.
As physician in charge of the Central Institution's Student Health Service, do many students come to you asking for contraceptives?
Oh, yes, quite a lot, I think. Nowadays, the word has pretty much gone round that student health services are in general not opposed in principle to giving contraceptive advice or prescribing the pill. And we get several every day. I think we see quite a, I don't think I've ever worked it out, but quite a substantial proportion of the women students come to us for contraceptive advice.
What sort of students come? I mean, are they ones who are liable to lead a wild sex life as soon as they get their contraceptives?
Oh, I don't think so. I think the characteristic thing is that they're all pretty well all girls who have actually started having sexual relations. I think it's very rare indeed. Indeed, I can't offhand ever recall a virgin such coming to talk about contraceptives to me. But I think people, once they've started sexual relations, I think it tends to be the more sort of serious and thoughtful ones who've got a relationship started and don't want to jeopardize their future students and take a risk with pregnancy, and the methodical kind of people who come to us for help and advice.
Do you give them the pill? Do you give the pill to anyone who asks for it?
Oh, well, no, not really. I mean, I think there are two factors to be worked out. The first is one talks generally about, with the student, with anybody who asks for contraceptive, or indeed asks any other medical question, something about the background, and get some sort of idea as to whether they're sensible and stable, whether the whole thing's an okay relationship, they're not being pushed into some situation they don't like by a powerful young man, and so on. Secondly, of course, we give a general physical check-up, particularly make sure the liver there's no history of liver disease, no varicose veins, and so on, make sure that it really is safe for the girl to be on the pill.
What are the dangers of taking the pill?
Oh, well, the suggestion is, the statistics are not very firm, but one is on the safe side, and the suggestion is that there's an increased risk of blood clotting disease taking the pill. It's known that girls who are pregnant have a slightly increased risk, not very great, but a certain increase of risk of a blood clot, and the pill, after all, makes a sort of effectively a long continued pregnancy. The overall risk, of course, is a good deal smaller than either the risk of delivering a full-term baby or the risk of having an abortion, criminal or not, so that a really reliable contraceptive offsets its dangers by avoiding the dangers of pregnancy.
Do you find that many students are obsessed with sex and drugs to such an extent that it affects their academic study?
Not drugs, I wouldn't have thought. They don't play a very major part in British university life. The occasional student gets hung up on pot or speed, but it's very rare. Sex, of course, is a different story. I would suppose that every normal student regards sex as one of the most important things that he is involved in, one way and another, deciding on his sexual maturity between the age of 18 and 24, and some chaps, of course, get involved and put more attention into the girlfriend or the boyfriend, whatever it is, at the expense of their academic work. By and large, I think that most students manage to combine their academic work and a great deal of interest in the other sex at the same time, very efficiently.
Most students seem to agree that morality was a matter for individual conscience, but several landladies and others in positions of power were found to disagree. Ladies and gentlemen, the Central Collegiate Building.
Bless this house, oh Lord, we pray. Make it safe by night and day. Let these walls...
The theatre opened this term for one of those famously obscure productions of the Music Society.
Impressive, but you can see what it's going to look like here in the foyer. It's unfortunate they haven't got the ceiling in at the moment, but still. Are they running late with the construction?
I think the ceiling is going to stay like that.
You expect it to be covered with something.
I think it's extremely attractive, and I'm looking forward to its being used, I hope, for the Camden Festival or for other things of the same kind. It looks a little unfinished, but it's got...
All the usual people were there.
This is the new bar in the Central Collegiate Building. Unfortunately, we can't serve with any beer because we haven't got a license.